Have you ever noticed how some of the most beautiful things in life are born from pressure? A diamond is just a lump of coal that handled stress exceptionally well. A pearl is the result of an oyster's response to a persistent irritant. In the same way, some of the most profound and necessary changes in our own lives, the pivots that redefine our entire journey, are often birthed from moments of great pain. Think about the story of Joseph. Here was a young man with big dreams, favored by his father, seemingly on a straight path to greatness. But then, the unthinkable happened. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and later unjustly imprisoned. Can you imagine the depth of that pain? The confusion, the loneliness, the feeling that everything he ever knew or hoped for was gone. His life wasn't just off track. The tracks themselves had been ripped up. This wasn't just a minor setback. It was a complete demolition of his life's plan. He went from being a beloved son to a slave, from a trusted servant to a forgotten prisoner. Each step down was a new layer of pain. It would have been so easy for him to become bitter, to curse God, to give up on hope entirely. In that dark, damp prison, his dreams must have seemed like a cruel joke. But here's where the art of the pivot comes into play. Joseph didn't let his pain define his character. Instead, he allowed it to refine him. In the pit, he learned humility. In Potiphar's house, he learned integrity and administration. In prison, he learned to use his God-given gifts, even when there was no apparent reward. His pain wasn't a dead end. It was a training ground. The Bible tells us in Genesis 50:20, after he'd risen to become the second most powerful man in Egypt, Joseph told his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Notice the pivot in perspective. He didn't deny their evil intent. He didn't pretend the pain wasn't real, but he saw a bigger picture, a divine purpose woven through his suffering. The pain forced a radical change in his circumstances, but it also forced a radical deepening of his faith and character. Without the pit and the prison, he would never have been in a position to save his family and an entire nation from famine. The pain was the necessary catalyst for his ultimate purpose. This isn't just an ancient story, it's a timeless principle. Consider the life of the Apostle Paul. Before he was Paul, he was Saul of Tarsus, a man driven by zealous rage, a persecutor of the early church. He was on a mission, on a path he believed was righteous, heading to Damascus to inflict more pain. Then, on that road, he had a radical encounter with the risen Christ. A blinding light, a voice from heaven. It was a moment of complete and utter disruption. In that moment, everything Saul believed was shattered. He was literally knocked off his high horse and left blind for 3 days. Can you imagine the psychological and spiritual agony of that? The man who thought he had all the answers was plunged into darkness, forced to confront the fact that his entire life had been a devastating mistake. The pain of that realization must have been immense. It was the death of his old identity. But that painful encounter was the pivot point of his entire existence. It was in that darkness that he began to see the true light. As he says in 2 Corinthians 12:9, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.'" Paul learned that his strength wasn't in his zeal or his knowledge of the law, but in his utter dependence on God. His greatest weakness, his moment of total brokenness on the Damascus road, became the foundation for his incredible strength as an apostle. The pain of being wrong, the agony of his past actions, forced a pivot so radical that it changed the course of history. He went from persecutor to proclaimer, from a bringer of death to a bearer of life. We often try to avoid pain at all costs. We build comfortable lives, we create routines, and we stick to the familiar path because it feels safe. But what happens when a storm hits that we can't control? A job loss, a health diagnosis, the end of a relationship, a deep betrayal. These moments feel like the end of the world. And in a way, they are. They are the end of the world as we knew it. But what if they are also the beginning of a new one? What if that pain is God's megaphone, as C.S. Lewis said, to rouse a deaf world? What if the very thing that breaks our heart is the thing that breaks us open to a new direction, a new purpose, a new understanding of who we are and who God is? The prophet Jeremiah speaks about this. He is known as the weeping prophet because his life was filled with sorrow and rejection as he delivered God's difficult messages. Yet, in the midst of his pain, he wrote these incredible words in Lamentations 3:22-23. "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." He found God's faithfulness not in the absence of pain, but right in the middle of it. The pain didn't stop God's mercy, it revealed it. The art of the pivot isn't about ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about facing it, processing it, and asking the crucial question, God, what are you trying to teach me in this? Where are you leading me now? It's about letting go of the life we had planned, so we can embrace the life that is waiting for us. Sometimes the pivot is external, like Joseph's journey from prison to palace. Other times it's internal, like Paul's transformation from Saul. But in every case, it requires surrender. It requires us to stop fighting to go back to the way things were and to start looking for where God is leading us forward. It's the moment we stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? Maybe you're in a season of pain right now. Maybe your path has been completely derailed, and you feel lost in the wilderness. Remember Joseph in the pit. Remember Paul in his blindness. Your story isn't over. This pain, as real and as deep as it is, might just be the setup for the most important pivot of your life. It might be the very thing that qualifies you for a purpose you never could have imagined. The process is messy, and it's rarely quick. It involves tears, questions, and moments of doubt. But through it all, we can hold on to the promise found in Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. All things includes the betrayal, the loss, the confusion, the pain. God doesn't waste our suffering. He redeems it. He uses it to carve out a new path, to build new character, to pivot us toward a future filled with a purpose greater than our pain. So, don't be afraid of the pivot. Embrace it as an art form, guided by the hand of the master artist. The pressure you're feeling might just be forming you into something more beautiful and resilient than you ever thought possible. Thank you for watching. If this message resonated with you, please like, share, and comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to Elyon's exclusive daily fix for more encouragement. Remember, Jesus loves you.